So I was a high school physics teacher for 2 years, and this is ultimately what I've learned and why I quit. So to start off this video, I want to go into a bit of my background. So I graduated with a biochemistry degree from college a year early, and I had my senior year completely planned out. I had research experience and clinical experience all set up for me. Unfortunately, there was a global pandemic that was going to happen called COVID, and that actually took away both those opportunities for me. Subsequently, there was an opportunity for me to become a high school teacher. Now, the reason why I decided to take that position is, first of all, I needed money. But second of all, I was sort of comfortable with teaching. When I was a high schooler, I used to be a drum instructor. Then eventually I became a general tutor. I went into college, became a learning assistant for physical chemistry. And then eventually I became an MCAT tutor. And then when I had this position, I accepted. Let's say I put a volume in here. So what you're doing is you're displacing water and lifting it higher. The density of the fluid and the volume displaced is equal to all that mass that we lifted up of the fluid, right? The mass of that fluid is what's pushing you up because you're taking its place. That's why when the Titanic sank, we basically decreased the amount of water displaced because we were filling all the holes. And so your buoyancy force, that force that pushes up, was less than the force of gravity, which made you fall. I had no doubt that I would be good at teaching. But what I realized from the position is there's a difference between being a good mentor and being a good role model versus being good at distributing information. First year of being a teacher, I learned a lot. I learned through trial and error. Despite the fact that, and this is the tricky part, it's the fact that I had every right to be upset or disappointed. But just because you have the right to doesn't mean you indulge in it. Because as a teacher and a mentor, I believe your job is to hold yourself to a higher standard and revoke your primitive desire to lash out. When I first started, I realized that I was just not mature enough to be a teacher at that moment. I would tell my students, I'm really disappointed. You should have done your homework, or this is easy, or whatever. I was just not diligent with my speech. And that was the first year. And I apologized to my students after the first year, and I promised them I would do better. Second year comes around, and I do better. And I am working hard. And despite the fact that my students didn't do their homework or lied or made excuses, I put in the conscious effort to find myself as the common denominator, to work on myself. And by the end of the second year of teaching, a lot of my students came to me after class and apologized. And they said they never saw a teacher apologize to them before, and they wanted to apologize themselves. And that was a really touching moment for me because I realized that I taught them by example. And that's something that will stick with me forever. But despite the marked improvements that I made, I decided to quit. And there's two reasons why I decided to quit. Number one, the obvious one that I'm just going to get out is that I needed clinical experience and research experience, things that this teaching position wouldn't afford me. And I wanted to get more into medicine because my ultimate goal here is to become a great doctor and help people in the most impactful way that I could think of, which is medicine. But the second reason was that I felt like I'm okay with taking it slow for the time being. I have enough energy at this moment to be a student, to be yelled at, to experience growth, to experience friction. And I know that eventually, as I grow in my career and my life, I will eventually assume the role of a mentor. But at this moment, I would like to precede my teaching roles with life experiences, with growth, with learning from the good and the bad of teachers. So I can compile that and cherry pick the best parts and be that to my future students. But I really viewed my words as something that had a lot of weight on my students. And I viewed my students as these labeled tree branches. I felt that there was a potential for them to grow and greatly affect their trajectory of growth. And that freaked me out because what if I told a student that was drawing an illustration that, that sucks? But what if that affected them? And what if I deterred the next Vincent van Gogh from being the next Vincent van Gogh? That really got to me, and I thought it'd be best if I just tried to find a position where I'd be a student and be in the student role and learn. And so that's really what made me sort of quit. Now, I also wanted to go into something that added to this, and this was in retrospect, which is the importance of a good teacher. When I was in college,
I wasn't the most empathetic character. I was very into just learning as much as I could for growth, and I didn't really care about whatever other people were talking about. I just wanted to learn. Obviously, I was socially aware enough to not comment my thoughts aloud, but there were a lot of things that I did not agree with most of my colleagues on. For instance, the most common thing I heard in college was that someone didn't do the homework well or someone didn't get a good grade because the professor was not a good teacher. And that really just made my eyes roll out of my head because I really thought the impetus shouldn't be on the professor, it should be on you. It's your career, it's your GPA, it's your future. You shouldn't rely on extrinsic factors in order to find success. You should find that within. You need persistence and determination. Needless to say, I never voiced that out to my colleagues. I'd just be like, oh, yeah, that really sucks. But in my mind, that's what I was thinking. I think as I grew older, I started to learn and understand that perspective a bit more because I started abstracting the whole thing and zooming out and thinking about what the purpose of a teacher is. And so, given my background in biochemistry, I apologize for this crude analogy, but we're going to go into a bit of lessons with biochemistry here to explain what I'm trying to talk about. You see, enzymes are a compilation of amino acids. They're just little molecules that eventually find themselves, strings themselves up into proteins. If you want to get into the specifics of chirality and all that, it gets a little more complicated. But regardless, you get these proteins, and if you string them up long enough, they'll start interacting with each other, assuming three-dimensional shapes, and then they'll eventually make what we call an enzyme. Now, enzymes work with these things called substrates. So you'll have a little thing fly off onto the enzyme in whatever interaction that they need, and they'll interact with each other for long enough with enough energy around them to either make the product or go back. Now, I view humans with a duality. I view humans both as overgrown enzymes and as substrate a lot of the times. That's how I think about things sometimes because biochemistry has screwed up my mind. Now, what do I mean? Well, first of all, humans quite literally are giant enzymes. They're a combination of a lot of subunits of a lot of enzymes. They're like, if you look at them from a giant thing, they're just one big mound of protein. So there's that. But I think of humans as enzymes because sometimes they catalyze and facilitate reactions. They make product or they go back. And I think of teachers as enzymes and students as substrates. These students interact with the teacher, and for long enough, hopefully with the right amount of energy and temperature and salinity and pH and whatever, you're undergoing your product, which will hopefully be, well, what? That depends on your definition of being a good teacher, though, the purpose of a teacher. I realized that a good teacher is one that can make a student that is both confident and cautious. And I think that a lot of teachers are not good teachers. Let's go off of an personal anecdote. This instructor will be unnamed because I don't want to cross any professional barrier, and I really am appreciative of the opportunities they afforded me, but this is where I sort of go into why I learned and truly understand what other people are going through because I went through it. I was in need of a research position while I was working as a medical assistant, and I've been applying for research positions for half a year straight. Application upon application, reading research paper upon research paper, emailing professors, and no one bit. Needless to say, this one professor decided to take a chance on me. This professor was someone that I ultimately found I couldn't respect. They taught their students in such a negative way. The postdoc in the lab was so nervous and just bumbling and so all over the place. And I realized that it's a perpetual little machine where negativity and pessimism and indulging in primitive behavior invokes the same in your students. They weren't creating good product. It was a faulty enzyme. At the end of the day, I told myself I'm going to just stick through this and be in the research lab for a year, and I'm going to get the experience, I'm going to grit through it, and then I'm going to get into medical school. But I realized the purpose of this is to grow from this, and I think I've gotten the lesson. I get it. Look, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I realize that's the importance of a good teacher. And sure, good teachers are not necessarily something you're entitled to, and it's not a right, it's a privilege. But the fact is, if you do have a good teacher, that makes a world of a difference. And I really empathize with my fellow colleagues and my students now at this point, because you really do need a good teacher in order to maximize product. And so in retrospect, I am really happy with my decision to quit. Not because I doubt my ability to grow as an individual and become a better teacher, but because the stakes are too high when we're talking about the future of these children's lives. I'd much rather sit on it, let it incubate, let me, compound a lot more life experience, and then I can find myself in a mentorship position when I'm ready for it. But I don't want to jump the gun. I'm not willing to sacrifice these individuals' futures for my growth. I guess in conclusion, I'm always thinking about how I apply what I've learned to the rest of my life. I think this is a really good reminder that we have to be diligent with how we approach things and how we interact with individuals. Obviously, there is an explicit relationship between a teacher and their student, where you're sort of actually in charge of facilitating good interactions and developing this person into a better person, because that's your job. But in general, as humans, we should elevate each other to be better individuals. Is there a moral obligation for this? Perhaps, perhaps not. And that seems like a very long-winded series of circuitous philosophical ranting that could get you nowhere. But that's, I guess, par for the course with philosophy. All I'm saying is what I want to carry on from this interaction and from this experience, from being a bad high school teacher to an okay high school teacher to a retired high school teacher, is the importance of diligence in my interactions with people and knowing that words do have impact. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can't hurt me. I think words can create a lasting and unresolved trauma that precipitates into a lot of nastiness throughout a person's life. And so I don't agree with this thought of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think words do plenty of damage themselves. And so I think we should be more intentional with how we speak. Anyway, my question for you all is, do you have any similar experiences with teachers and instructors and mentors? Are you a teacher/instructor/mentor yourself? And how have you gone about this? Do you pay attention to these things? I'd like to know what your thoughts on the topic are. Thank you for listening to me go off on my musing. We're going to try to post a video every 2 weeks, barring any surprises. I did get a question of why I'm making these videos all of a sudden and why I'm so fervently making content. And that's because this extends outside of me now. And I might make a YouTube video on this topic itself, but I just wanted to say that right now, my main goal with this whole YouTube channel and content creation, my primary goal is to donate funds for Children's Hospital, because like I said, we have the ability to impact our students' futures. Same thing goes with Children's Hospital. We're dealing with the children, we're dealing with future, and there's like a metronome to my movement. There's rhythm and tempo now. And so I would like to pursue this. I'd like to make some more content. If you want to support my project called the Asclepius Podcast, you don't have to be in medicine or healthcare or science or anything like that, or academics. But if you want stickers or candles or nifty shirts and hoodies, please check out our website at theasclepiuspodcast.myshopify.com. That's currently what it's called. Look in the description if we change it to a new domain. But basically, we're trying to generate money for the Children's Hospital. 10% of all profit goes to Children's Hospital. The other 90% goes back into the company, essentially, but also for sustainability and for paying the team members that are helping me with this process. Expect a video every 2 weeks. I'll try to keep you guys updated down below with all the notifications as well as YouTube shorts. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.